This is All Things Ansys, a podcast from the technical support staff at PADT. Episode 96. We chat with PADT simulation IT expert Ahmed Fayad about the most common tech support questions that we get around installation, licensing, and running Ansys tools, along with the news and events from the world of Ansys. Once again, welcome to our podcast, All Things Ansys. I'm your host, Eric Miller. I'm lucky enough to be one of the co-owners here at PADT, a longtime Ansys user, 35 years now, and in charge of consulting IT, HR, and facilities at PADT. Today I'm recording from my home in a wet Phoenix, Arizona. We were hit by the remnants of Tropical Storm Norma, and I know that many of you are dealing with rain from that storm as well as Ida and aftermaths from multiple things. So I hope everyone is safe from the weather and the plague that's still really affecting all of our lives. So I hope everything's going okay out there. Before we dive into our discussion today, I wanted to note that I went to the 36th annual Space Symposium held in Colorado Springs, Colorado. It was a great event, and I was able to catch up with many customers as well as Ansys employees because the newly acquired space simulation tool company AGI was there with a very large booth. In fact, if you've ever been to the Space Symposium, you know that they are quite famous for their ice cream that they hand out, that it's hand scooped and handed out on the night that's kind of the party night at the event. And it was especially encouraging to see how far they've come along in their integration into the world of Ansys from both a technology and a business standpoint. And there's lots of things going on in this area, and we hope to have some of them back on the podcast. We talked to them about what their mission simulation software does, and we hope to learn more in some future discussions with them. Also, my big takeaway from the Space Symposium is that space is really booming. The large companies, the medium companies, and the small are all doing quite well. Military, commercial, research, people doing launch vehicles, doing satellites, doing sensors, and then all of the companies like PADT that support all the people doing these things. There's just so much going on in space, and it's kind of hard to pick one thing out. There's commercial launches, there's military refurbishment of older weapon systems, there is hypersonics, there is sensor crazy, lots of sensor stuff, communication. It's all doing very, very well right now, and a lot of great technology being used, and in most places Ansys. It was a smaller than normal event, and talking in a crowded, loud room with your mask on while standing away from each other was a bit difficult, but after a day or so we all got kind of used to it, and I do look forward to going back in April when they're going to have the 37th edition of the same event. So hopefully I will see some of you there. So let's talk a little bit about our interview / discussion today. It's about the tech support calls we get around IT issues. I can explain a little bit more, but then I do at the beginning of the recording. So let's just go ahead and listen to the recording of my discussion with Ahmed. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again today. We've got a little bit of a different topic today, but one that touches every user of Ansys, and that's IT. I'm joined today by Ahmed Fayad, who is our, how do you describe yourself? Our IT guy that helps with support? Is that a valid station? Simulation IT expert? What would you say?
I think the keyword that we could use is system specialist.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah. So IT system specialist, let's call it that, because systems might infer Ansys systems products. And
true, true. So, as most of our listeners should know, PADT does technical support for the customers that buy Ansys from us, and they call up and they ask, questions about how to use the tool and how to, do fancy things and how to do simple things and where's the help files and things like that. But a large percentage of our tech support calls really are not related to doing simulation or leveraging the power in the Ansys tools. They have to do with what I would call IT. And so we thought we'd bring our expert in that area on the podcast to kind of go through what the most common questions are so that you might get your answer before you have to ask it. So I know you did a little bit of prep beforehand. Why don't you share with our listeners when you thought about it, how you kind of group the kind of questions we get?
Yeah, so my involvement with customers starts with the minute that they make a purchase or sign up for a trial, or we're working towards getting them up and running. So starting with receiving the license file, creating a portal account, and getting set up that way, and then the installation of the products, and then deciphering all the licensing problems. Next would be running the tool, actually, burning some chips, making generating some heat.
Some heat, yep.
Yep. And then when it comes from IT perspective, getting fancy and trying to run on multiple machines and remote solve manager and things like that.
Okay.
So
well,
those are
kind of the three categories, right? So,
yep.
So installation and the initial thing, issues with running, and then dealing with the batch remote solving, right?
Yep.
So let's start at the beginning with installation. What's the usual biggest problem that people have with installation?
Usually the biggest issue that we have is one of two things. Number one, they have an antivirus that's meddling with what's allowed to run and install and create and all that. With recent ransomware and how uptight security has been, Ansys has been playing catch up with all new policies. So having the right permissions, running as administrator, and being able to overcome the firewall and the Windows Defender restrictions. So those are the two most common ones. Okay. Another common thing that we run into is people download, the latest and greatest version 21 R2, and nice tool, but I have all these files from version 19. So they try to install version 19 on top of 21, and the software just screams and blows its head, because the way the thing to keep in mind for installation order is just sequential order works. You can go back up to version 10 or even earlier if you have the source code. But if you install it in order, it will work. Out of order, it will not.
So you can't do 18, then 20, then 19. You got to do 18, 19, 20.
Exactly.
Okay. That actually makes sense, kind of.
Another one that it's not as common, but I still run into it, is customers sending us issues or whatever, and then I request a screenshot, and I have to squint my eyes, and is that Windows 7?
Go back in the memory bank and
yeah, it's like either they found a way to roll back Windows 10 into low res mode, or that is Windows 7. So if you didn't know, Windows 7 has been out of support from Microsoft. Don't blame us. And I think Windows 8 is soon to follow.
Yeah.
So make sure that you have the right flavor, the right OS. Home Edition usually doesn't play well. So
right.
Windows 10 Professional. Yeah. The major Linux flavors. Not Ubuntu, unfortunately. So,
not Ubuntu. So it's still not Ubuntu. Yeah. And CentOS is still the most dominant one, or what's?
CentOS, Red Hat, and SUSE Linux are supported. Okay. The news is 2022 Ubuntu is coming online. So
that is good news. There, you heard it here first. So if you're it seems like people that like to run Linux on Mac hardware like Ubuntu. So
yep.
That's
more native. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. So back to the first item, I had another question about that. So let's say that their licensing is not working because of firewalls and things like that. Is that because the way the license manager works is they use a network port to send messages to the license manager and back again, and that's blocked?
So that's an excellent segue into licensing,
yes.
Which is the next topic on the list. So licensing, the main two issues that we have with licensing is, number one, and I'm sorry, I feel like such a hypocrite, because I wrote a blog post declaring that Ansys will no longer require license server upgrades.
Right.
And
now it does.
It does. And it's because of licensing changes. So
right.
The first thing that I would recommend to anybody trying to install Ansys, regardless of the version, download the latest license manager version.
Okay.
And we have numerous tech support cases where the customer is, oh, it's not running, it's giving me an error, it's misbehaving, I can pull one license but not the other. And then simply having the latest license manager software running resolves that issue. That being said, the license manager is backwards compatible and the installation is non-disruptive. So it takes about 5 minutes end to end. So that's the first headline I would say about license manager. The second thing, the licensing manual has all this information, but it's scattered. Okay. Regarding firewall rules and Windows Defender. Mm-hmm. Generally, we need 2 ports to be open, 1055 and 2325 by default. You can change those if you're feeling fancy. And Windows Defender, there's a list of processes that you need to allow. Most of the time, it does it upon install. Some organizations lock down what gets changed on install, and you have to do those manually.
Okay, that's good to know. And and unfortunately, I think because the bad guys are getting better at their job, that's going to get tighter and tighter over time.
Yeah.
And I know that exception files get quite long sometimes.
Yeah. And luckily for the license server, there are like 5 executables that we just have to, if they're not added automatically, we just have to add them.
Okay.
The next big thing with licensing is the license file itself.
Right.
The way the licenses work, they're locked to a host. So they're either MAC locked or disk ID locked, or in a previous generation dongle locked. So it's like a USB key. Mm-hmm. And the thing with that is try to have the latest license file installed. And if you decide to change the server or format it, just let us know so we can cut you a new key. Usually a format changes the disk ID, and then moving from one server to another changes the MAC address and disk ID together. So we'd have to regenerate the license file.
Yeah, so getting new keys when you make any kind of a change like that is going to be critical. That's a really good point. And that made me remember, for a very long time, Ansys had a non-standard license manager, and there was talk of going to standard FlexLM. Did that happen?
So right now, everything, FlexLM is the back end of the license manager. Okay. So with the majority of the products, you could run them with a plain old FlexLM. Okay. But you won't get any of the reporting and the who's using up all the licenses and all the dashboards that the Ansys License Management Center provides. So if you're an IT person, I remember when I used to take a lot of these calls, which was a long time ago, the IT folks would say, well, all my other tools run on FlexLM. I just want to put this license file in FlexLM. We recommend against that because it doesn't work with every product and you don't get the bells and whistles the Ansys License Manager has. Now there's an option to split it. So if somebody's running FlexLM in the background, you could run it. The only issue there is what I've faced in the past is you have to shut down all FlexLM other license servers, shut them down before you install the Ansys License Manager for it to work. Okay. Otherwise, it will just scream and yell and ports and things like that. Okay. But it is doable. It's a little more involved, but it is doable. Okay. So that's one of those ones where if you're considering using FlexLM and the Ansys License Manager tools at the same time, you should reach out to your support provider before you do that. Yeah, exactly. Save you some time. Some pain and suffering. Okay, good. Any other licensing issues? One of the things that came up in the past 2 years, and I think it's gaining in popularity, is elastic licensing. Yes. And that takes away the license server out of the equation completely. And basically your licenses are hosted in the cloud, and it's an on-demand kind of on-demand setup. So you use up, for the number of hours that you're running the tool, you use up these credits that you pre-purchase. Again, setup on that is very straightforward. Again, sometimes it requires some tweaking, but most of the time, plug and play. So not a major issue. So if you're using Elastic, you use the Ansys Cloud license server rather than your own. Is that a true statement? Okay. Yep. Yeah.
So that's
If
nice.
you want to get complicated, you could use both.
Right. Yeah, I think I've seen that. So again, if you want to do that, call your tech support provider. Okay, that's good to know. And I think definitely the volume of licensing issues has gone down over the last couple of years. Is that a true statement? It was about the same.
Licensing issues in terms of the license server running and performing and staying alive, yes, that has gone down a lot. The latest versions, let's say from 2019, have been very, very stable.
Good.
Very easy to use. Reporting works. 99% of the time, we have zero issues with the actual application. It's usually, they implemented a new IT policy and it just locked everything down, or license files expired, then you added the new one and it doesn't like it, and it just takes a little bit of cleanup to work.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. And I'll add, if you are a PADT customer, and this may be true of other support providers, but we read license file, we speak license file. So you may look at it, it looks like gobbledygook, and we look at it and we actually know what it says. So don't beat your head against that. Reach out and we can help translate some of those things. I know some of the traffic that I see back and forth is you just explaining what's in. People are saying, well, I don't have access to this tool, and you say, well, your license file has this, this, and this in it. And we can help with that for sure.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Ansys is always trying to optimize their licensing. So, for example, if you buy, Mechanical Enterprise now, you won't get a separate space claim key. And people are like, hey, where's my space claim? Well, it's been rolled into the Mechanical Enterprise. And so little subtleties like that. We try to do our best to explain things and take care of customers. Sometimes things might be a little confusing. So if you just bear with us, we'll get to the bottom of it. And our first and foremost objective is to get you running, to get results out of your door to your customer, so you could use more tools. So that's. And we try our best to get things done as quickly as possible. So
yeah, and I've seen that. Our philosophy from support from day one has always been, okay, let's fix the immediate problem so that you can do your job, and then let's come back and find a long-term solution. And that certainly is true of these system level things as well.
A common thing that we saw as a trend in the past 18 months, other than COVID, it's been people working from home. And the fun part of that is all the people connecting over VPN and delays and timeouts and things like that. So there are some variables that we can play with to increase the timeouts. So working from home would not be a nightmare and you get disconnected. And, so you have borrowable licenses, server timeouts, work from home licenses that are not as common as, the height of the pandemic, but they still do exist.
That's a really good point. If you have unreliable internet at home and you're trying to get your access to your license over VPN, over your home internet, and the family is doing classes and streaming Disney movies, it can be really frustrating. And don't reach out, because we do have solutions for that.
Yeah. The next general subject.
Go ahead.
Yeah, your pup was upset about something.
Apologize to our listeners that somebody knocked on the front door.
So the next topic that I have is regarding running the tools themselves. So when running the tools initially the first time, you will get user access control warnings, which is like a Windows security thing telling you, do you want to allow this application to run and communicate with the world? And depending on the application and what you're running, you might get like 4 or 5 of those when you first start up. If you don't allow those, your software will not work. So you have to allow them. Sometimes it takes resetting that option to get up and running. The next big things that must be taken into consideration: running parallel or using your multi-core processor and hyper-threading. They're not friends.
Right.
Yeah. Hyperthreading is what telephone operators do. They buy 1,000 lines but sell 10,000 numbers, and they try to oversubscribe. When you're running highly efficient simulation code, that doesn't work very well.
Yeah, and you can turn that off, right? You can tell it to just use the processes without hyperthreading. And that's for those who aren't familiar with it, it's where you can, let's say you have 4 actual physical cores. I'm dating myself. Let's say you have 8 physical cores on your chip. You can make it look like 16 by tricking the machine to do calculations on an up clock versus a down clock and things like that, right? Yep. And it really is a trick for running lots of less demanding processes. It's great, but when you're using 100% of that core, not so good. Yeah. So that's definitely something to turn off. Okay, cool. What else?
The other 2 main things that we run into, especially for the electronics guys and anybody doing transient or really large or long running simulations, is disk space and disk speed.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are like, hey, this has been running for 4 days and it crashed and Ansys sucks and whatever. And then somewhere buried in the 52,000 lines of logs you see out of disk space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's as disheartening as that is, well, you ran out of disk space. So that's something to consider.
Well, and we just ran into this with a new user at PADT, running across the network and running in the cloud with like, say, OneDrive, where it's being constantly copied up to the internet. That can be deadly as well from a performance standpoint.
Yeah. So usually, if you're trying to solve, you either have high-speed external storage or you use internal disk. Like a network share, an S drive or G drive or whatever that the IT person has, loaded to your profile is not a good target for solving. You can use it to dump, Scratch or dump logs, but do not solve directly to it because you will suffer.
Yeah, I think a good lesson there is just know where the reading and writing is happening, where it's physically located and what the network connection is. Because you can have remote drives that are very fast connections.
Yep.
But you have to pay for that. I know that a lot of IT departments don't have a lot of simulation engineers are like, everybody else works off of this central machine or even the cloud, right?
Yep.
And by default, your home directory, which is where it's solving at, most of the Ansys products solve at, is not on the machine sitting in front of you, and you've got a very thin pipe that you're pushing a lot of product through. Yeah.
Yep. And the next thing that we see a lot with the electronics products is RAM, the amount of memory.
Okay.
When configuring machines for the electronics users, I'm like, okay, so how much RAM do you think you need? And the minimum I get is like, I think I can survive with 128 gigs. So, and this is RAM, not hard disk.
Yeah, this used to be hard drive. Yeah. The more RAM, the better for products like HFSS and SI Wave and Maxwell. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Again, don't ask me how the calculations happen. That's for the electronics team. They're experts at that. But I can tell you that if you're running electronics, prepare to spend a ton on RAM or go to the cloud.
Agreed.
Yeah. And let me think. Is there anything? Oh, yes. There's one more thing that is a point of contention, and we end up with angry or annoyed customers, and that is GPUs.
Yes.
Not all GPUs are created equal. Developers cannot write code that is universal. So Ansys works very well with NVIDIA and not all NVIDIA. So there's a list of supported NVIDIA cards. So the code word that a lot of people use is NVIDIA Quadro. Yes. NVIDIA Quadro, but not all NVIDIA Quadro. So before you spend any money on GPUs, just check with us and we can give you an exact part number or model number that you can use and how many you can use. And in some cases, the application engineers can tell you, instead of spending $10,000 on the latest NVIDIA Quadro card or whatever the latest and greatest is, it might be a little better for you to, replace your CPU, get more cores for your simulations. You might, benefit more from more cores. GPUs are nice. They're all the hype. Find a million articles about it, but in many cases, they're not the solution.
Yeah, definitely talk to the experts about that, because, say, discovery requires a GPU to run, right? It's a lot live uses the GPU as its solving engine.
Yeah. For electronics, for example, you can use the GPU for a very limited number of problems. Mechanical, a little more. So
it's kind of in the middle. Yeah. And then for CFD, you get certain solvers see a really big increase. So I think a lot of people get one thinking it's going to be a magic bullet and I'm going to run 3 times faster. And no. So definitely talk with your experts about that. There's a lot of other in the pipeline there, right? It's how fast, how much memory. And how quickly can you write to the GPU and read from it, and how quick, if you're, before spending $10,000 on a really super duper GPU, spend $1,000 on really super duper hard disks, SSDs or M2s that really improve the communication. So we can help with, where to spend your money. Recommendations, Well, and speaking of the hackers again, it's not the hackers, it's the Bitcoin people are buying up all the GPUs anyway, so it's kind of a moot point. You can't really get the good ones very easily. So so kind of have to wait on that.
Spend $50,000 to get a $50,000 Bitcoin a year later. Work at McDonald's, you could make more money. But anyways, that's off topic.
Yes.
The next thing that is common, again, it's more common with work from home and people, centralizing their spend, is remote desktop, Windows remote desktop.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It has come leaps and bounds in terms of reliability and quality of the picture and resolution. Again, certain products, when you're trying to run remote desktop, because they use the GPU to render, like Discovery, like electronics, require a little bit of tweaking to make it use the GPU for remote desktop. That's a common thing that we face with, like 5 people in an office sharing a workstation, and everybody's trying to remote in, and they get, I can't run this software. Why can't I run this software? Because of the GPU. Why? So it's some minor tweaking to get it to get up and running.
Yeah, I've been very successful running remote desktop from home on my machine back at the office for mechanical. I think it runs very well in mechanical, but also I don't have any fancy hardware on the other end, so it's pretty much nothing to get in the way.
Mechanical generally is not heavy in terms of GPU use. I know that the electronics products are the most common ones that have this issue. So again, there is a fix for it. I don't know it off the top of my head, but just if you run into that issue, just let us know.
I know we really struggled with that at the beginning of COVID. The HFSS users were the ones that were having problems with crashes and things like that on their remote desktop. So it does seem like we found the fix to that. And it was some obscure flag like 4 levels down in the options that needed to be changed.
Yep, exactly. Next topic that I had on my list was solving on servers, Remote Solve Manager, and maybe Ansys Cloud. We could throw that in there.
Yeah, well, if we got time, we'll fit that in there for sure. Yeah.
So RSM stands for Read Some Manuals. No, I mean Remote Solve Manager. It is the Ansys solution to basically running large jobs on multiple nodes, or submitting jobs to a cluster with a third-party scheduler. The things to consider are communication firewall. You need to make sure that all the ports that are needed are open. The next big thing is make sure that it's the same software version, same release, same patch across the board in terms of Ansys, as well as If you're running Linux, things like that, make sure that you have the right software running on all of them. There are some underlying prerequisites. Just make sure that they're all the same. Otherwise, there'll issues in communication. Final thing I'm not going to go deep into RSM, but the final thing that I would say for RSM is make sure that you're building your models for the right target. Again, a quick call to the tech support, and the guys will be like, oh, well, instead of doing it this way, split it this way and run it this way. And you adjust your submit command to make the most use out of it. Protect your runs, make sure that you have a restart point being written, things like that. So help you optimize your runs instead of taking something that runs on a desktop and try to run it on a cluster.
Really, really good point. That's a really, really good point. Yeah, and that's kind of hard to define because it's very case dependent and solver dependent. So definitely count on experts for that.
Yeah. The final thing that is up and coming, and it is being refined by the day, I think, is Ansys Cloud. Mm-hmm. So Ansys partnered with Microsoft, and they built this gigantic data center, or multiple gigantic data centers, filled with simulation designed servers.
Right.
And to layer you from all the complexity, you just upload your file, write your submit command, and hit run, and that's it. You have a remote desktop session that you could use, or you could run it completely hands off, and it solves, and you can download your information from there. So it's an option to take away all the complexity of running Ansys and the cost of hosting the servers, and it takes it into the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the little I played with it, the interface seems much improved, fairly straightforward, and but also can be tricky, especially in what machines you run on. And it's kind of like you were saying with the solving on servers, is you got to make sure the problem and the machine are a good match.
Yeah, and because the cloud, it's a time-based charting system, so if you submit the wrong job and it runs for 2 weeks, that's a lot of money down the drain for you to, whoops, I forgot to hit this flag or that flag. So again, and our engineers are more than capable at that. I can't believe I'm saying this, but one option in the cloud is a feature called Bring Your Own License.
Yes.
Which is a huge money saver where you don't use your cloud credits to run, let's say, electronic solver. Mm-hmm. You use cloud credits only for the server time and the 20 HPC packs that you're borrowing. I don't know. So that way you kind of save a little bit on cost. It's
use your paid up licenses as much as you can, or your leased license as much as you can, where you can, and then use the more expensive elastic units, I think they're called now, for the time-based, volume-based things that you can't use it for. Yeah.
Yep. It is involved to set up, but again, it is doable. So.
Yeah, and kind of wrapping it all up, my big takeaway is, and kind of thinking more big picture, because these are really good specific things that hopefully when you run into them, this will help you work through them faster. But kind of the bigger picture is, and we see this quite often, is the engineer and the IT person can often speak a different language, and they can have different goals. I think the simulation engineers sometimes forget that the IT support person has to take care of everybody's computer, not just yours. And the IT person doesn't acknowledge or understand that the simulation engineer has very unique needs within the organization. And some organizations solve that by having IT departments that just help high performance computing users, right? That's rare, but when it happens, it's a lot easier. And one of the things that we do, and I think it's important to either develop internally or use your support provider, is as a translator between those different groups. So I think a lot of times, your job is to listen to the Ansys user and then explain to the IT person why they need it a certain way. Is that a valid statement?
That is a valid statement, and this is becoming more commonplace with a lot of smaller companies outsourcing their IT. So the IT person may be supporting, a dental office in the afternoon, and then supporting, an aerospace company the next morning. So there's a lot of translation that needs to happen. Involve us early, and then the biggest thing that I think is a lifesaver for us is screenshots. Please, when you have a problem, screenshot it. Send us the screenshot. It makes the job like 90% easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, that's very useful, and like I said, I hope it helps people solve these IT problems. And if your support provider doesn't have, if you're not lucky enough to have PADT as a support provider and being able to talk to Ahmed, then find someone like him in your support provider or someone in your organization that's willing to become an expert on these things over time. And it can save everybody a lot of time and money, because when you can't get a license, or your machine is crashing, or your job isn't working, that's money out the door, right? You've got things to get done, and you can't get them done because your computer's not running. And having you rely on that support. Reach out. Don't try and solve it yourself, because it's not like a vibration problem or a high frequency electromagnetics problem. It's a different world, and you can't know everything.
and there's a lot of information in the Ansys forums, but again, it's generic. It's what someone else experienced, not yours. And sometimes the fix could be, a 2-minute click of a button, and sometimes it might be more involved. So just reach out and let us know, and we'll be more than happy to help out. And yeah.
Great. Well, I always like catching up with you, and maybe sometime in the near future, we can do an update on new hardware trends out there, because I know there's some new processors, and AMD is back again, and maybe sometime in a couple months we can schedule some time to give everybody an update on what's going on in the wonderful world of hardware. But always great topic, and like I said, I appreciate your time.
Yep, my pleasure.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I can't overemphasize that last bit of our discussion. So often we see engineers trying to deal with issues like the ones we talked about by themselves, or IT people getting frustrated because things aren't making sense. This isn't the way I usually do it. So use a translator or get one. It will get you back and running quickly, because the problem is often one just of people not communicating, not using the same terms, not using the same approach to things. So bringing somebody in that speaks both simulation and IT, like we're very lucky to have on staff, really makes a huge difference. And we'll talk a little bit about this in news, but Ansys keeps growing, both through acquisition and by adding capability to the various tools. I just got off a phone call with one of the product managers. It's amazing some of the things that are going on across the Ansys portfolio. And the one thing that I walked away with was, if you feel that Ansys doesn't have a good solution for something you want to do, reach out. You may be surprised. I'm always learning. I didn't know we could do that. I didn't know that we had this capability. I didn't know that this solver did this thing. You'd be surprised at what's available, not just in the Ansys products themselves, but in the partner tools like MotorCAD or Flownex or Rocky DEM, and so many other tools out there. So, there's probably a way to do what you want, especially now, the thing I'm going to talk about in the news, with an Ansys tool. So do reach out and do let us know, especially if you're in PADT's territory and you're one of our customers, or you want to be one of our customers. Our salespeople and our engineers are fantastic at helping understand what you need and which Ansys tools are the best fit. Let's go ahead and talk about the news. First, stocks. I'm doing this Thursday morning. It's September 2nd, 2021. And right now, Ansys is at $367 a share. So year to date, that's up well, I can call it up. It's up 0.88%. Let's just say it's been flat for the year. For comparison, the S&P 500 is up 20% for the year. And if we look at some of the other stocks kind of in the same family, Altair is up 28%, PTC is up 10%, and Autodesk is down 5%. So only Altair is doing better by a little bit than the S&P 500, and Autodesk is doing worse than Ansys, and PTC is kind of in the middle there. So a mixed year for the industry, stock price-wise. Of course, a lot of things have to do with things out of the control of the companies and the perception of the companies and all that crazy stuff that I always talk about I don't understand. But in Ansys news, we have huge news to report. Hopefully you've already seen this, but Ansys did a press release earlier that's just recently that said they have entered into an agreement to acquire Zemax. If you don't know Zemax, it's the dominant, the number one, the one that everybody uses, tool for simulating optical design. Things like lenses and prisms and mirrors and fiber. So, how you shape light is what Zemax does. And pretty much any assembly that shapes light in one way or another, whether it's a laser beam or light from for a telescope, they use Zemax. And their products are called Optics Studio, Optics Builder, and Optics Viewer. Optics Studio is the tool that most people use. It's their design tool. And it's incredible. I mean, we're lucky enough to be near Tucson, which is the hot spot for optics in the world, or at least in the US, and a couple other places around the world as well. And, it's just there's so many good users down there. And so it's always been kind of frustrating for us to kind of just try and work with them rather than having them part of the Ansys family. So, this deal is going to take months to work out, and we'll work with, we'll get some Zemax experts onto the podcast to talk about what it means. And that is pretty much all the news they had from Ansys. Big enough news. I'll take it. I'm very excited about this. Not as big to me as LS Dyno was, but it's a big deal, and we can't wait to see how it all turns out. Let's talk about PADT news next. We announced here at PADT this week that we released an ACT extension to create 3MF files from any Ansys mechanical result object of a solid part. So this was written by PADT's Matt Sutton, a frequent guest on this podcast. It's up in the Ansys store right now, and you can download and install it as we speak. The 3MF format, if you're not familiar with it, is a new 3D printing file format that, among other things, supports colors on the surface of a part. We've used it very successfully with our own Stratasys J55 color printer, and we hope you also find it very useful. To learn more, go to the PADT blog at www.padtinc.com/blog. And if it's not at the top, the article's not at the top, just search for 3M. M is in Mary, F is in Frank, 3MF, and you will find in the article, and it tells you how to install it, how to use it, as well as a little bit of background on what Matt did to make it work, what tools he used and what approach he took, the algorithm and all that. So a great example of an easy to write extension, and we hope to expand it as we get more feedback from users in the future. So this is just our minimum viable product of that product. Publication-wise, I've only got one Ansys blog that I want to talk about. It's called How to Accelerate Ansys Fluent Simulations with Adaptive Meshing. So if you're a longtime Fluent user or you're new to the tool, you should check out this blog post and dig deeper. If what you see in the blog post is interesting, dig deeper into the manuals. Adaptive meshing refines and coarsens the mesh as you solve. It puts refinement where you need it at a given solution step, and then it moves it around as required. So it's much more efficient because as let's say your turbulence moves further downstream, you don't need that refinement upstream anymore, and so it gets rid of it. There's some great animations to visualize what I'm talking about in the blog article, and it's a great tool, and it's something that everybody should be looking at and seeing how they can use it in their solves. PADT blog-wise, the big thing is we did do a blog article about the 3D printing of results using the 3MF file that we can now output with the extension that Matt wrote. We also have a great article from our very own Josh Stout on thermal result visualization in Ansys SI-Wave IcePack and Ansys Electronics Desktop IcePack. So it's a very helpful way to look at how you can see your thermal results from both of these tools that model electrical system behavior and then calculate heat, and then, how do you see the heat? And especially if you're not a thermal engineer, you may be an electrical engineer, and this is a little new to you. This is a great step-by-step on how to do that. And tomorrow, so by the time this is out next week, we'll be posting an update on what's new in the latest release of Flownex. So Flownex came out with an update this week, and there's some cool things in there for a lot of different applications in the Flownex world. Webinar wise, we're doing pretty good. We've got the mechanical update coming up. That's going to be on 2021 R2 post-processing graphics and MAPDL update. It's on the 8th of this month of September at 11 o'clock Phoenix and Pacific time. Then show-wise, we'll be at Rapid TCT. We're not going to have a booth there, but a bunch of PADT folks are going, which is next week, the 13th through the 15th. And then I'll also be speaking, and one of the people attending something called the Startup Connection, which is a local event for startups, as the name implies, for what we call the East Valley of Phoenix in the Chandler area. So I'll be there for that. And then we will also be speaking about some of the research we've been doing for NASA that involves simulation and 3D printing. And that's at the end of the month, September 29th, at the AIAA Rocky Mountain Annual Technical Symposium at the University of Colorado Boulder. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. That's it for events and pretty much it for the podcast. So I want to thank everybody for once again listening in. We do appreciate it. Do not forget to subscribe to our newsletter at www.padtinc.com/opt-in. Do spread the word about the podcast. Please do subscribe to the podcast and like it and all those things and whatever tool you use for podcasting. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for joining us for the All Things Ansys podcast, episode 96. As a reminder, this podcast is not affiliated in any way with Ansys Inc., and the opinions expressed are those of the people on the show only and not of their current or former employers. For more information, visit www.padtinc.com/blog, and please share your thoughts and questions through an email to podcast@padtinc.com. See you next time.